I burned my marriage down with a gym membership and a man named Elijah. That's the simplest way to say it. The uglier, truer version is this. I turned self-care into an addiction, used a barbell as a shield against every hard conversation, and kept texting another man while I was carrying my husband's baby. And now, 3 nights a week, I stand in the doorway of someone else's condo and watch that husband buckle our daughter into a car seat, then drive her away from me. My name is Danielle. I'm 30 years old. Until recently, I was the marketing girl with the perfect little suburban life. Married at 24, house at 26, pregnant at 29. The kind of life you post in highlight reels, cute couple gym selfies, brunch photos, ultrasound pictures, with tiny socks in the frame. No one posts the screenshots of explicit messages with their gym buddy. No one posts the paternity test envelope on the kitchen counter. No one posts the moment their husband looks at them like a stranger and quietly says, "We're done." Tonight, I'm standing by Elijah's living room window, barefoot on his cold laminate floor, watching my husband's taillights disappear down the street with our 3-month-old daughter in the back. My daughter. His daughter. The test said so. 99 point something percent. That should have been the miracle that saved us. Instead, it just decided what last name would go on the birth certificate of a child who goes home to a man who can barely look at me. Behind me, Elijah is in the kitchen, rinsing bottles like we're some kind of normal couple. "You okay?" he calls out casually, like he didn't help me pack my things into boxes and move out of the house my husband and I bought together. I tell him I'm fine. I always say I'm fine. It's easier than saying, "I don't know who I am without the gym, without you, without him." It's easier than admitting that I don't just miss my marriage. I miss the version of myself who believes she would never be the woman who cheats. The gym used to be a place I went 3, maybe 4 times a week. Somewhere between spin class after work and 2 sessions a day, every day, it became something else. A sanctuary, a hiding place. A door I slammed in my husband's face every time life felt too heavy, too real, too close. That door didn't just shut him out, it opened to Elijah. I remember the first time my husband touched my phone with suspicion. It was sitting on the kitchen counter, screen lit up with a notification. "Elijah, you killed it today." I laughed it off, rolled my eyes, called it gym banter. I told myself it was harmless. That's how every bad story starts. I told myself it was harmless. But it wasn't harmless the day my husband picked up that same phone and went silent. It wasn't harmless when I watched the color drain from his face. It wasn't harmless when he left and didn't come home that night. Now there are lawyers, mediation dates, custody schedules built around my breastfeeding, my work hours, my mistakes. There's a version of me on paper. Mother, 30, engaged in an extramarital affair, moved out of the marital home while pregnant. There's a version of my husband on paper. Father, 32, primary financial provider, petitioning for shared custody. On paper, I'm a case file. In real life, I am a woman who thought she could outrun her loneliness on a treadmill and ended up sprinting straight out of her own life. I wish I could tell you this started with Elijah. It didn't. I wish I could tell you I cheated because I was bored or reckless or evil. I didn't. It started much earlier in smaller, quieter ways that looked a lot like ambition, discipline, healthy lifestyle choices. This is the story of how a gym membership, a man who wasn't my husband, and my own refusal to sit with pain turned into a baby, a divorce, and a custody battle I might lose. And if you're wondering how anyone lets it get this far, so am I. Because I didn't wake up one morning as the pregnant woman who moved in with her affair partner while her husband hired a lawyer. I got there one skipped dinner, one extra class, one unread text from my husband at a time. And if I'm ever going to forgive myself or even understand myself, I have to go back to where it really began. Back before the twice-a-day workouts, before the secret messages, before Elijah ever learned my name. Back to the girl who loved the gym for the right reasons, and the woman who slowly turned it into an escape route. You already know how the story ends. Me at this window, watching my husband drive away with our daughter. What you don't know yet is how many chances I had to stop this before it ever got here, and how I walked past every single one. I wasn't always this woman. Before the twice-a-day workouts and the secret messages, I used to think of myself as pretty normal, boring even. I'm 30 now. I work in marketing for a mid-size firm, the the kind of place with open plan offices, too many meetings about brand synergy, and a coffee machine that's always breaking. I know how to make products sound shinier than they are. I know how to read people, predict what they'll click, what will make them say, add to cart. I wish I'd used that skill on my own life. I met my husband, my ex-husband-to-be, I guess, when we were both in college. I was the girl with color-coded notes and group projects under control. He was the guy who fixed anything. Printers, laptops, broken lamps in the dorm. Back then, he'd come into the common room with a toolbox and a lopsided grin, smelling like engine oil and cheap soap. "Marketing major, right?" he said the first time he talked to me, tapping my textbook. "So you're going to sell people things they don't need for a living? And you're going to electrocute yourself and call it a career," I shot back. He laughed. I remember thinking it was a nice sound, easy, unguarded. The opposite of my own life at the time, which was a tight knot of grades, deadlines, and planning. My entire future by 21. We started dating not long after. Study sessions that turned into late-night takeout, long walks across campus where he'd talk about wanting to work with his hands, not sit behind a desk. I liked that about him. The certainty, the way he could point at something and say, "I can fix that." 3 years later, we got married in a small ceremony with the people who mattered. Family, a few close friends, nothing over the top. I wore a simple dress. He cried his way through the vows, which everyone expected from me, not him. We were young and stupidly sure of ourselves, but in a soft way, not the loud, showy kind. He got a job as an electrician with a commercial contractor. I landed my first real marketing role. We moved from a cramped apartment with thin walls into a little house in a quiet suburb 4 years ago. Beige siding, a tiny yard, neighbors who waved when they brought their trash cans in. "Nothing fancy, but it's ours," he said, tossing me the keys in the empty living room, his voice echoing off bare walls. It felt like the starting line of adulthood. The gym was part of my life, long before Elijah, long before any of this. In college, I was one of those people everyone jokingly hated, the girl who actually liked working out. I loved routine, the rhythm of classes, weights, sweaty faces and mirrors, the way my brain finally shut up when my body was tired. After we graduated and work swallowed our days, the gym membership became one of the first luxuries to go. Too expensive, I said. Too far. Too much hassle. I told myself I'd compensate with runs in the neighborhood, yoga videos on YouTube, quick circuits on the living room floor. And for a while, I did. I stayed in decent shape. We went on weekend walks. I wore the same jeans year after year and thought, "See, I'm fine." Except, fine started feeling like a slow fade. My days blurred into emails, campaign briefs, dishes in the sink, laundry cycles, Netflix. Somewhere along the way, the girl who loved pushing herself morphed into a woman who always had "maybe later" on the tip of her tongue. About 20 months ago, I came home from work and dropped my bag on the counter with more drama than necessary. "What's wrong?" my husband asked, looking up from the game on TV. "New position," I said, pulling off my heels. "They bumped me up. Better title, better pay, better hours." He grinned. "That's great, Danny." "Yeah," I said, and then, before I could second-guess myself, "I'm joining a gym again." He didn't hesitate. "Do it. I'll come with you if you want. Couldn't hurt to get in better shape for those ladder tests." My heart did a weird squeeze. I pictured us side by side on treadmills, sharing water bottles, laughing between sets. A healthy couple, the kind you see in ads. But another part of me, the selfish, hungry part, wanted something that was just mine. Something that didn't include schedules, in-laws, shared budgets, constant compromises. "I kind of want it to be my thing," I said carefully. "Like, my space, you know?" He paused, then nodded. "Yeah, that's fair." At first it was normal. 3, maybe 4 times a week after work. I'd walk in the front door sweaty and flushed, and he'd be stirring something on the stove or scrolling his phone on the couch. "How was it?" "Good. Hard. I'm going to be sore tomorrow." He'd smile, kiss my forehead, and we'd have dinner together. We were still that couple, Netflix and takeout, shared jokes, lazy Sundays. We went to family dinners at his mom's, birthdays, the occasional double date. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but there was nothing you could point at and say, "That's broken." And the gym? The gym felt like waking up a part of myself I'd abandoned. Discipline, sweat, control. I found comfort in the routine, in seeing the same faces, in instructors who learned my name. There was talk of community, of team, of showing up for yourself. It sounded noble, healthy, safe. No one tells you that "I just need some me time" can become a wall if you build it high enough. Back then, though, it was just a membership and a key tag on my car keys. Back then, he still believed me when I said, "It's just the gym." So did I. Something shifted around the 6-month mark. It wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no slammed doors, no, "we need to talk." It was quieter, like a draft coming through a tiny crack you don't notice until the whole room feels colder. The first sign was how I started waking up earlier. At 5:30 a.m., while the sky was still gray and my husband was warm beside me, I would slip out of bed, grab my leggings from the chair, and tiptoe out of the room. He would mumble something half asleep. "Going already?" "Yeah," I'd whisper. "Morning class." He always rolled over, trusting, relaxed, unaware that the gym had become less of a hobby and more of an escape hatch. Then Saturdays became gym mornings, then Sundays. At first he joked about it. "Damn, Danny, you're training for the Olympics or something?" I'd laugh it off, kiss his cheek, tell him he was being dramatic. But I could see it, the confusion in his eyes, the subtle hurt, quickly buried because he didn't want to be the controlling husband. The truth is, I liked that he didn't question me. I liked that he didn't dig, because if he had, even I wouldn't have been able to give him a real answer. Around that time, I found my gym people. Michelle, the meal prep queen. Derek, who made everyone laugh. A handful of others whose faces blurred into a chorus of encouragement and sweaty high fives. And then there was Elijah. The annoying part is that nothing was inappropriate at first. That would have made this story cleaner. More villain, less gray area. He was just there. In every class I took, always stretching next to me. Always offering a tip, a modification, a compliment that sounded harmless, but landed a little too close to the bone. "You've got great form," he'd say casually. "You pick things up fast. You're stronger than you think." I should have caught it then. How those comments warmed me in a way my husband's familiar affection didn't anymore. Not because my husband didn't love me, but because Elijah saw the version of me I was trying to become, not the tired, responsible woman I'd grown into. One night, after a particularly hard class, Elijah walked me to the parking lot. "Good work today," he said. "You're glowing." Glowing. My husband used to say that about me. Years ago. Before life got heavy, before routines dulled, before we started talking more about bills and clogged drains than dreams. Elijah's words hit me like a shot of something I shouldn't have been craving. But I told myself it was harmless. God, that phrase should have been a warning label. Inside our home, the shift became harder to hide. He'd ask, "Dinner together tonight?" I'd respond, "Can't, evening class." He'd say, "Want to go to my mom's Sunday?" "I have training in the morning, maybe after." But after never came. I watched his shoulders fall a little every time, just a fraction, just enough that I could pretend I didn't notice. Our friends noticed, though. My sister-in-law pulled me aside at a birthday party. "Danny, what's going on? You're different lately." "Just focusing on myself," I'd answered, too quickly. Even his brother asked if everything was okay. "You never come to family gatherings anymore. Jake's worried." Instead of listening, instead of asking myself why the people closest to us were concerned, I doubled down. "It's just the gym," I'd insist. "Why is everyone so dramatic?" Even when I started to see it, the way every minor stress sent me running out the door with my gym bag, I refused to acknowledge it. Argument? Gym. Chores piling up? Gym. Tense silence at dinner? Gym, gym, gym. It became a reflex, a way to avoid anything uncomfortable. But the real truth, the one I only see now, too late, is this. I wasn't avoiding my husband. I was avoiding the version of myself that marriage required. Steady, grounded, present. The gym wasn't just exercise anymore. It was identity, validation, escape. And Elijah? He was a spark I told myself I could control, one I didn't realize would burn my entire life down. The night everything cracked open didn't feel dramatic at first. It wasn't stormy. There was no screaming match, no slammed doors, just a quiet Tuesday evening where the air between us felt wrong. I came home around 8:30 p.m., damp with sweat, hair sticking to the back of my neck, gym bag slung over my shoulder. The house was dim except for the kitchen lights. My husband was sitting at the table, dinner cold in front of him. "Hey," I said, dropping my keys into the bowl by the door. He didn't answer right away. He just stared at his plate, jaw tight in a way I had never seen before. Finally, he said, "We need to talk." Those 4 words hit harder than any barbell I'd ever lifted. I forced a smile. "Can it wait? I need a shower." "No, it can't wait." He looked up then, and the hurt in his eyes caught me off guard. This wasn't annoyance. This wasn't insecurity. This was a man unraveling. I sat across from him slowly. "Okay, what's going on?" He exhaled, long and shaky. "Danielle, I think you have an unhealthy relationship with the gym." I blinked. Of all the things I expected, that wasn't on the list. "What? Because I'm trying to better myself?" "It's not that," he said. "It's everything. You're never home. We don't eat together anymore. We don't talk. Every time I try to bring something up, finances, chores, anything, you grab your bag and disappear." My chest tightened defensively. "So, I'm not allowed to have hobbies now?" "That's not what I said." "You're twisting it." His voice stayed calm, but it trembled around the edges. "I'm saying you're avoiding our life together. I'm saying I miss my wife. I'm saying I'm worried about you and about us." I hated the way his words made my stomach flip like I'd swallowed a stone, because a part of me, one I had buried under protein shakes and HIIT classes, knew he was right. But admitting that felt impossible. "You're overreacting," I snapped. "Lots of people go to the gym every day. It's good for my mental health." "And what about our marriage?" he asked quietly. "Is that good for your mental health too?" The question sliced me open in ways I didn't want to feel, so I avoided it, like I avoided everything. "You're being dramatic," I said, standing too fast. "Needy. Controlling, even." His face fell like I'd slapped him. "Controlling? Danny, I'm literally asking you to spend time with me." "I spend time with you," I insisted. "When?" "I don't know. Stop interrogating me." There it was, the ugly shift. The panic disguised as anger, the guilt disguised as defensiveness. My heartbeat thudded in my ears, my palms slick with sweat. He reached across this table, voice softer. "Baby, talk to me, please. I feel like I'm losing you." That should have broken me. It should have made me sit down, breathe, explain, apologize. But all I could think about was how tight my chest felt, how trapped, how close he was to the truth I was terrified to face. So I did the only thing I'd trained myself to do. I grabbed my phone, walked to the bedroom, and locked the door. "I'm done talking," I said through the wood. "I need space." "Danielle," he said, voice muffled but cracking, "we can't keep doing this." I didn't answer. I lay on the bed, scrolling through my gym group chat, forcing myself to laugh at memes while my husband slept on the couch downstairs. The next morning, he was gone before I woke up. I didn't text him. He didn't text me. For 3 days, we lived in silence except for logistics. I'll be home late. Dinner in the fridge. Appointment reminder at 3. I told myself the distance was his fault, that he wasn't supporting me, that he didn't get it. But beneath the irritation, something sickly and electric was buzzing through me. Fear. Fear that he was right. Fear that I had already crossed lines I couldn't uncross. Fear that if I stopped moving long enough to think, everything would come crashing down. And then came the moment that stripped away every excuse I had. He checked my phone. I had left it on the kitchen counter, something I never did. I heard him pick it up as I was coming down the stairs. He was standing there, screen lit in his hand, face drained of color. "Danielle." His voice was hollow. "What is this?" My stomach plunged. He didn't need to say the name on the screen. I already knew. Elijah. The messages. The ones I kept telling myself were harmless. I felt the blood drain from my face and then flood back, hot and panicked. "Why are you going through my phone?" I snapped instinctively. "That's an invasion of privacy. You're being controlling." He didn't move. He didn't yell. He just held up the phone with the explicit message still open. The world tilted. Everything inside me recoiled and scrambled and searched for an escape. "It's nothing," I whispered. "It doesn't mean anything." "Danielle," he said, voice breaking, "how long have you been sleeping with him?" My throat closed. "No," I lied. "I'm not. It was just texting." He asked again. I lied again. He asked me to unlock my phone so we could read the rest together. I refused. And in the silence that followed, something in him snapped. He threw the phone onto the tile. It shattered. "Danny," he whispered, horrified at himself, but it was too late. I hit him. Weak, panicked blows on his back, fists fueled by shame more than anger. He didn't respond. He didn't hit back. He just walked out the front door and didn't look at me again. The door closing behind him felt like the end of everything, because for the first time, I knew this wasn't about the gym. This wasn't about self-improvement. This wasn't about needing space. This was about me running from a life I'd built with a man who loved me, straight into the arms of someone who wasn't mine. And now the truth was out. All of it. Raw, ugly, unavoidable. The marriage wasn't cracked anymore. It was broken. Forever. When the door closed behind him, the silence didn't feel like silence at all. It felt like pressure. Thick, suffocating, vibrating in my chest, like a warning I had ignored for far too long. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the pieces of my shattered phone on the tile floor. Hours earlier, it had been a lifeline. Notifications, gym schedules, Elijah's name lighting up my screen like dopamine. Now it looked like the remains of my marriage. I sank to the floor, knees hitting the tile hard. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. Not from anger, not from fear of getting caught, not even from losing my phone. I was shaking because for the first time I couldn't run. There was no gym bag to grab, no I need space excuse, no class starting in 10 minutes. There was no escape from the truth I'd been sprinting away from for months. I had broken my husband and myself, and the life we'd built so carefully, piece by piece. The first wave, shock. My breathing turned shallow, uneven. Images flickered through my mind, snapshots of us before everything went rotten. Him teaching me how to fix a garbage disposal, me surprising him with tickets to a band he loved, us painting the nursery yellow before we even started trying for a baby. We weren't perfect, but we were real. And now, he was gone. Not temporarily, not angrily stomping around, gone in a way that said something in him had snapped beyond repair. I pressed my palms to my eyes, trying to stop the tears, but they came anyway, hot, humiliating, relentless. Why did I do this? I whispered into the empty room. But the tile didn't answer, neither did the walls, because even I didn't know. The second wave, self-defense. The human mind is a strange, desperate thing. Mine immediately searched for a shield. He shouldn't have checked my phone. He violated my privacy. He acted out of anger. He broke my property. I clung to those thoughts like a life raft, even though I knew they were flimsy. I repeated them under my breath, shaky but insistent. He shouldn't have looked. He shouldn't have looked. He shouldn't. But even inside my head, it sounded hollow. Because the truth was simple, undeniable. He wouldn't have needed to look if there was nothing to find. The third wave, guilt. I crawled across the floor and picked up my phone case, then the battery, then a piece of shattered screen. I held them in my shaking hands the way you hold something fragile, something dead. I saw his face in my mind, his eyes, the hurt, the disbelief. The quiet breaking of a heart that trusted me implicitly. I hated that look more than anything. If he had screamed, I could have defended myself. If he had insulted me, I could have been angry. If he had begged, I could have said he was being dramatic. But he did none of those things. He just broke, and watching him break cracked me open in return. The fourth wave, fear of what comes next. I didn't know where he went. I didn't know if he'd come back. I didn't know if this was the moment everything ended or the moment everything finally had to be confronted. And worst of all, I didn't know how far the fallout would reach. Would he tell his brother, his mother, my family? Would he leave me? Would he ask if the baby was his? The thought made my stomach twist violently. Because deep down, deeper than I allowed myself to admit, I knew the baby might not be his. And that truth terrified me more than anything Elijah had ever said, done, or promised. The fifth wave, facing myself. I got up slowly and looked at myself in the hallway mirror. Sweaty, mascara smudged. Chest rising and falling too fast, eyes swollen, red, wild. I didn't look like a woman who made a mistake. I looked like a woman who had dismantled her own life with her bare hands. And there was no one left to blame. Not the gym, not Elijah, not my husband, not hormones, not stress. Just me. It hit like an avalanche. Every avoided conversation, every lie, every time I walked out the door instead of facing a real problem. I had trained myself to run, lift, sweat, push through pain, but I had never learned how to stay, how to sit with discomfort, how to talk when things got hard. My husband asked for connection. I gave him excuses. He reached for me. I reached for my gym bag. He begged me to come home emotionally. I found validation elsewhere. The ugly truth settled into my bones. I hadn't just cheated on him physically. I had abandoned him long before Elijah ever touched me. The final wave, realization. By the time I stood up, my legs were stiff. My throat burned from crying. My heart felt like it was bleeding from somewhere deep inside. But the worst part? I knew this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of consequences I could no longer outrun. And when my husband returned, not home, but into the next stage of our unraveling, He wouldn't be the same man who once promised forever. Neither would I. The morning after everything fell apart, the house felt like a stranger's home, too quiet, too clean, too aware of my every breath. My husband still wasn't back. The couch cushions were rumpled where he'd slept. His toothbrush was gone from the bathroom sink. The absence hit me harder than the fight itself. I paced the kitchen, hands gripping the counter until my knuckles went white. I wasn't panicking because he left. I was panicking because part of me knew he might not come back at all. He had walked out before, after arguments, after tension, but never like this, never with that emptiness in his eyes, never after discovering the truth I'd been avoiding even from myself. My phone, repaired, fragile, memory wiped and hollow, buzzed in my hand, but every vibration felt like a threat. Elijah's name flashed twice. I ignored it both times. I could barely breathe, let alone deal with him. Then came a softer vibration, my husband's brother, Jake. A pit formed in my stomach. He knows. Of course he knows. I had humiliated him so thoroughly that the only place he had to go was to someone who loved him. I didn't pick up. The phone calls began. By noon, I'd gotten calls from his brother Jake, his sister-in-law, his mother, and Elijah multiple times. I didn't answer any of them. I wasn't ready to be confronted by the people who had every right to hate me, but the text from my husband finally came, short and sharp. I'm staying at Jake's. I'll come by tomorrow for my things. My whole body went cold. His things, not our things, not coming home. His things. I slid down the cabinet door until I hit the floor, throat tight and burning. This was real. This was happening. And it was going to get worse. The family interventions. When Jake finally got me on the phone, I tried to sound calm. I tried to lie to myself. This is a misunderstanding. It didn't mean anything. It was only texting. But Jake wasn't fooled. Danielle, he said, voice low and steady. Stop lying. He's broken. I swallowed hard. I didn't mean to. You did, he cut in. Maybe not on purpose, but you did. And he's trying to hold himself together right now because of the baby. The baby. The words stabbed deep, twisting somewhere behind my ribs. Because I knew, and Jake didn't, that the baby might not belong to the man grieving the marriage I had just destroyed. You need to tell him everything, Jake said. No more lies. I can't, I whispered. It'll kill him. There was a pause, then softly, it already did. The sister-in-law. His sister-in-law texted me next. I knew something was wrong months ago. I asked you. You lied to my face. He loved you. Do you understand that? He loved you so much. You need help, real help, and you need to fix whatever you can before it's too late. I cried so hard I got lightheaded. Fix whatever I can, but what if the damage was already irreversible? What if the baby wasn't his? The pregnancy complication. When I first realized I might be pregnant, excitement bloomed unexpectedly. My husband had always wanted to be a father. He would have been the kind who built tree houses, who read bedtime stories in funny voices, who held the baby against his chest like the world was a safer place because they were in it. But when the test came back positive, my heart didn't leap. It froze. Because I knew Elijah and I had crossed more lines than just emotional ones. When my husband asked if the baby was his, the shame nearly split me open. I said what I hoped was true, what I needed to be true. I think so. But I think is not the same as I know. Now everything was collapsing and I couldn't stop thinking about that possibility, the one that turned this tragedy into something monstrous. The meltdown. By day 3, I couldn't pretend anymore. I broke down completely. I screamed into pillows. I tore apart drawers looking for things that reminded me of our good years, our wedding photos, our trip to the lake house, the ultrasound picture taped to the fridge. I sobbed until my voice cracked, until my stomach tightened around the baby inside me like it was protesting the chaos. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I could barely stand. The gym, my escape, my sanctuary, my addiction, meant nothing now. I couldn't bear the thought of stepping foot inside that building. The guilt was louder than the music, heavier than the weights, sharper than the mirrors reflecting a woman I no longer recognized. I stayed in bed in the dark, phone on silent, curtains drawn. Every sound in the house reminded me of him. His laugh in the hallway, the way he hummed when he made coffee, the squeak in the floorboard he always said he'd fix, but never did. Everything reminded me of what I'd thrown away. The lawyer. When he finally texted asking to talk, I knew what was coming. A lawyer. Evidence, documentation, custody, consequences. He wasn't the kind of man who made threats. So if he said, "We need to talk," it was already decided. And the moment he said the words, I called a lawyer, something in me shattered so completely that I had to grip the table to stay standing. A lawyer meant this was no longer emotional. It was legal, permanent, real. He wasn't playing. He wasn't bluffing. He wasn't waiting for me to fix things. He was preparing to leave me. The final escalation, my confession. When he came home briefly the next day, we sat at opposite ends of the couch. Too far to touch, too close to avoid the truth. I need to know, he said, voice hollow but steady. How long? My mouth went dry. A year, I whispered, off and on. He exhaled slowly, like someone punched the air out of him. And the baby? My heart thrashed against my ribs. I think it's yours, but there's a chance. He nodded, not angry, not yelling, just gone. Okay, he said quietly. Then we do a test. No accusations, no outbursts, no begging. Just gravity. This was the moment our marriage died. Not with screaming, not with a fight, with a whisper of acceptance. We'll do the test, he repeated. Then we'll figure out everything else. Everything else. Divorce, custody, a child being born into a fractured home. And yet even then, some wounded, delusional part of me still hoped. Maybe he'd stay. Maybe he'd forgive me. Maybe the baby would save something. But when he stood and walked toward the door, I finally understood. There was no more us, only consequences. And they were only just beginning. The darkest moment of my life didn't arrive the day my husband found the messages. It didn't arrive when he walked out the door, or when he said, we need a test, or even when I told him the truth about Elijah. The darkest moment arrived in the days after the paternity test, when time slowed down and every minute felt like a punishment I had earned. The house was too quiet, like it was grieving with me. The walls held echoes of a life I destroyed. The kitchen smelled faintly of the dinners we no longer cooked together. Our bed felt foreign, cold, enormous, with only one body in it. While we waited for the results, the world kept moving, uncaring. The sun rose, the mail arrived, the neighbors mowed their lawn. Meanwhile, I was drowning. Every morning, I woke up with a heaviness so dense I could barely roll onto my side. Every night, I fell asleep with my hand on my belly, whispering apologies into the dark, to my unborn child, to my husband, to the version of myself who once believed in vows. And yet the baby kicked. Soft flutters, tiny reminders that life still existed inside me, even as everything outside of me was crumbling. The day I stopped going to the gym, people always talk about addiction like it's a monster outside you, something that lures you, traps you. But mine was quieter. Mine was a door I kept choosing to walk through. Until one morning, I drove to the gym out of habit, parked, and stared at the entrance. For the first time in months, I felt nothing. No rush, no thrill, no sense of relief. Just nausea. Because suddenly I was acutely aware that building wasn't a sanctuary. It was the place where my life had forked into two timelines, and I had chosen the wrong one over and over again. I put the car back in drive and went home. It should have felt like growth, like clarity. Instead, it felt like mourning. The day I moved out. On day 5 of the wait, I broke. I texted him, words trembling. I can't live like this. I'm sorry. I'm moving out. He didn't respond for 3 hours. 3 hours of staring at my phone until spots swam in my vision. 3 hours of bargaining with reality, imagining him calling, forgiving, begging me to stay. Instead, he replied simply, okay. No anger, no fight, just surrender. Elijah arrived with his truck that weekend. He stood awkwardly in the doorway of the house my husband and I bought together, watching me fold my life into cardboard boxes, clothes, toiletries, the baby clothes we picked out together, our framed ultrasound. Every item felt like a sin placed carefully in a box. My husband wasn't home. He couldn't watch. I don't blame him. But the empty house, our house, watched me leave. It watched me carry our future out the door. It watched Elijah help me load my things. And as we drove away, the house disappeared in the side mirror, shrinking smaller and smaller until it vanished. Something inside me vanished with it. A new place that wasn't home. Elijah's condo was modern, polished, staged to look like someone else's magazine-ready life. It smelled like detergent and scented candles instead of home-cooked meals and old t-shirts. He set up a little corner for me, a drawer, a side of the bed, a nursery he built for a child that might not be his. He thought he was being kind, supportive, loyal. But I couldn't stop seeing my husband in every detail of that nursery, his excitement, his patience, his dreams. Elijah kept saying things like, don't worry, we'll be okay. I'm here for you. I don't care whose baby it is. But every time he said we, something twisted inside me. Because he wasn't the one I wanted by my side. Not really. Not when the world felt like it was falling apart. I wanted my husband, the man I had betrayed, the man I couldn't have anymore. The night before the test results came back, I didn't sleep. I lay awake in Elijah's bed while he slept beside me, breathing evenly, peacefully ignorant of the storm raging inside me. I stared at the ceiling. I counted heartbeats. I held my belly and sobbed silently. Because if the baby wasn't my husband's, I knew I would lose him forever. And if the baby was his, I knew I would still lose him. There was no version of tomorrow where he forgave me completely. No version where we went back to what we had been. No version where we raised our child together in the home we'd built. The only question left was what kind of loss awaited me. The kind that takes your marriage, or the kind that takes your marriage and the father of your child. The darkest realization. Sometime around 4 a.m., as the world outside shifted from black to gray, a truth I had been running from finally settled on me with crushing clarity. I had ruined the life of a good man. Not a perfect man, not a flawless marriage, but a good man who trusted me, believed in me, chose me every day. And I betrayed him in the most intimate, humiliating way imaginable. The gym didn't destroy my marriage. Elijah didn't destroy it. Even the affair wasn't the beginning. I did, piece by piece, lie by lie, Tao B, by escape, every time I walked out the door instead of working through what scared me. I wasn't running toward something. I was running away from myself. And the worst part? There was no one left to run to. Not really. I had never felt more alone. The turning point of my story did not feel like a moment of empowerment. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff with no idea whether the ground beneath me would crumble or hold. It happened the day the paternity test results came back. Elijah was at work. I was alone in his condo, pacing the living room like a trapped animal, phone clutched in my sweaty hands. Every second felt like a countdown to judgment on my choices, my marriage, my future, my motherhood. Then my phone buzzed. A single notification from the lab. The email subject line was so small and unassuming it looked almost cruelly ordinary. Results available. Prenatal paternity analysis. My breath caught in my throat. I sat on the edge of the couch because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. My fingertips trembled as I opened the email. My eyes scanned the numbers before my brain could catch up. Probability of paternity, 99%. Conclusion, the father is the husband. For a moment, I didn't breathe. Then my whole body collapsed forward in a sob so intense it shook my ribs. Relief, guilt, grief. They crashed into each other like waves. My baby was his daughter. Not Elijah's, not the product of my betrayal. My husband's. The man I destroyed. The man I pushed away. The man I still loved so deeply it felt like a wound. I pressed both hands to my stomach, whispering through tears. You belong to him. You belong to him. The truth hit hard and fast. I had cost my daughter the chance to be born into a whole family. I had cost myself the chance to raise her alongside the man who was meant to be her father. I had cost him the right to feel joy instead of devastation when his child was confirmed as his. And no test result could undo that. The call I didn't expect. 3 hours later, after my tears had dried into salt on my cheeks, I picked up my phone and texted him. The results are in. She's yours. I stared at the screen, waiting for the typing bubble. Nothing came. 5 minutes, 10, 20, then finally a response. Okay, just that. No celebration, no relief, no anger, no warmth. Just a single word that felt like a final door closing. I had imagined, foolishly, that this revelation might shift something. That knowing she was his might soften him. Might make him fight for us the way he used to. But his okay was more devastating than any outburst could have been. It meant, I'm glad she's mine. But I still can't stay with you. This changes nothing about what you did. It was the moment I finally understood that my marriage was already gone, regardless of biology. The visit that broke me. He came by later that evening. Not for a conversation. Not to reconcile. Not to yell. Just to say, I'll be filing for divorce. His voice was steady, calm, almost heartbreakingly gentle. I should have been grateful he wasn't cruel, but his kindness gutted me more than anger ever could. I asked him if we could talk. He shook his head. There's nothing left to talk about, Danielle. I begged him not to give up on us. I cried. I reached for him. He stepped back. I will always be in our daughter's life, he said quietly, but I can't be your husband anymore. That's when something inside me finally broke all the way through. The denial, the bargaining, the fantasies about fixing everything. All of it shattered. And in the pieces was the truth I had refused to face. Losing him wasn't a punishment. It was a consequence. a consequence of my choices, my lies, my refusal to confront my unhappiness before it swallowed us both. A new kind of clarity. After he left, I sat in the nursery Elijah had set up. The crib, the pale walls, the rocking chair that wasn't his. I touched my belly again, feeling tiny movements beneath my palm, and I said something I'd never said out loud. I'm so sorry. Not to Elijah, not to myself, to my daughter, because she would one day learn the story of her beginnings. And I didn't know how to tell her that her mother ran away from a stable, healthy marriage into the arms of a distraction. That she had been conceived at a time when the foundation of her parents' relationship was already fracturing because of me. But clarity brings responsibility, and for the first time in months, I understood what had to happen next. I couldn't keep pretending to be a victim of circumstance. I wasn't trapped. I wasn't confused. I had made choices, terrible ones, and now I had to stand in them. I couldn't repair my marriage, but I could choose to stop running. Running to the gym, running to Elijah, running from accountability. My turning point wasn't hope. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acceptance. Acceptance that I was going to be a single mother. Acceptance that my husband would never come back. Acceptance that Elijah wasn't a soulmate, just the symbol of a life I used to escape my own. An acceptance that the only way forward was through the wreckage I created. For my daughter, for myself, for whatever person I needed to become next. Someone who didn't run anymore. Fallout doesn't arrive all at once. It doesn't crash through the door screaming consequences. It seeped into my life slowly, drop by drop, day by day, until suddenly everything around me was burning. The paternity results didn't save anything. They didn't soften my husband's heart. They didn't rewind time. They didn't erase Elijah. They simply clarified whose daughter I was carrying and whose life I had dismantled. My husband filed for divorce 2 days after the results came in. There was no fight, no passionate plea, no desperate attempt to salvage anything. Just paperwork, signatures, a clean, brutal separation of a life that used to be shared. He moved through the process with a quiet strength that made me feel ashamed every time I saw him. He never yelled, never insulted me, never threw my mistakes at me like weapons. He didn't need to. The absence of anger spoke louder than rage ever could. He had stopped loving me, or maybe he still loved me and simply stopped letting that love guide him. Either way, I was no longer his home. The shift in his family. His mother stopped calling me sweetheart. His sister-in-law stopped texting. Jake stopped offering advice. They weren't cruel, not the way they could have been, but they looked at me differently now, like something fragile and tragic they didn't know how to hold without cutting themselves. At the hospital, after Olivia was born, his mother kissed her gently and didn't look at me at all. I can't blame her. I had taken her son's trust and ground it into dust. Elijah's role and my realization. Elijah tried to be my stability, tried to be supportive, tried to act like we were building a new life together. He drove me to appointments. He cooked meals I barely ate. He took photos of my belly like we were some Pinterest-ready couple expecting a miracle. But I couldn't unsee the truth. He was not the father of my child, not emotionally, not spiritually, not genetically. And when the paternity results confirmed what I had feared and hoped in equal measure, Elijah didn't react with anger or sadness. He reacted with enthusiasm. Good, he said. Now we can raise her together without worrying. Together, with him, in his condo, far from the life I had built, the marriage I had destroyed, the man who still owned every corner of my heart, even after everything. The more Elijah tried to insert himself, the more suffocated I felt. There were moments he held Olivia at the hospital, smiling for pictures he posted online, and my stomach twisted, not with jealousy, but with wrongness. He was not meant to be in the story this way, and deep down I think he knew it too. The world learns the truth. When the divorce papers were served to me, at Elijah's condo in front of him, I cried. Not because I didn't expect it, not because I thought he might take me back, but because it made everything official in a way my heart wasn't prepared for. I was no longer his wife, just the mother of his child, a woman he used to know, a woman he was learning to forget. People talk. That's what communities do. His coworkers learned, neighbors whispered, his extended family formed their quiet opinions. The narrative was simple. I cheated, I got pregnant, I moved in with the other man. There was no room in that story for nuance, for loneliness, for emotional unraveling, for the addiction I mistook for self-improvement. And I didn't deserve nuance. My husband's silent withdrawal. As Olivia grew inside me, my husband seemed to shrink. not physically, but inside himself. At appointments, he stood back, hands in pockets, jaw tight. At ultrasounds, he smiled at the screen, but not at me. At the hospital, when he held our daughter for the first time, tears filled his eyes. But none of them fell for me. He was polite, gentle. I had become a formality in his life. It struck me hardest the day he said, "I'll always be there for her, but you and I, that chapter is over." That chapter was our marriage, our home, our life, our dreams. He didn't say it with bitterness. He said it with truth. And truth hurts far more than anger. The internet side of the fall. Elijah kept posting pictures. Him holding my daughter, him standing beside my hospital bed, him proudly becoming a dad soon. Seeing another man claim my husband's daughter broke something inside me I didn't even know was left. My husband reported the posts. Some were removed, others stayed. But he didn't confront Elijah. He didn't demand anything. He simply said, "If he doesn't stop, there will be legal consequences." Not for me, for Elijah. He no longer saw Elijah as competition, just another complication he would navigate for his daughter's sake. And that hurt more than jealousy. It showed how completely he had closed the door on the idea of us. The day he became a part-time father, watching him take Olivia home for the first time broke me. I stood in Elijah's doorway, holding the diaper bag, my heart pounding as my husband reached gently for our daughter. His expression softened, just slightly, as he cradled her tiny body. His thumb brushed her cheek. Her little fingers curled around his pinky. And then he turned away. He didn't look at me, didn't say goodbye, didn't ask how I was coping. He only said, "I'll bring her back by 6. He walked to his truck, buckled her in, and drove away, leaving me standing in the doorway of a condo that wasn't home, beside a man who wasn't her father, inside a life that wasn't supposed to be mine. That moment, watching the man I loved drive away with the child we created, was the single most painful consequence of my choices. Not losing my marriage, not the divorce papers, not the rumors or the judgment. It was knowing that the family I'd once dreamed of still existed, but without me in it. If someone had told me a year ago that my life would end up here, sharing custody of my daughter with the man I betrayed, living in a condo that never feels like mine, lying awake wondering how I became the villain of my own story, I would have laughed. I used to think consequences happened in big, dramatic scenes. A fight, a confession, a sudden ending. But consequences are quieter. They unfold slowly in moments you barely notice until they stack high enough to bury you. For me, the real ending wasn't the divorce filing, or moving out, or the paternity test, or watching my husband hold our daughter and walk away. The real ending came later. It came the day I realized my daughter would grow up splitting holidays between 2 homes, that she would hear 2 versions of her parents' love story, one that began beautifully, and one that fell apart because her mother didn't know how to ask for help, how to stay, how to tell the truth before lies filled the silence. I can't rewrite what I did. I can't undo the hurt I caused. I can't rebuild a marriage I burned down with my own hands. But I can choose what comes next. I go to therapy now. Not because I want to excuse myself, but because I want to understand the parts of me that broke everything I loved. I'm learning to sit with discomfort instead of running from it, learning to speak honestly instead of defensively, learning to mother a child who deserves stability, not chaos. And every time my husband comes to pick up Olivia, every time her tiny arms reach for him, I feel both the grief of what I lost and the gratitude that she still has him. He has moved on in ways I have not. He is calm, steady, focused on our daughter, not on punishing me. There is strength in that I didn't appreciate until too late. We will never be husband and wife again, but we will always be the 2 people who brought Olivia into the world, and that means something. Maybe one day the story of us won't feel like a wound. Maybe it will just be a lesson carved deep enough to never forget. And the lesson is simple. If you don't face what hurts, you will end up hurting the people who love you the most. If you run long enough, you eventually lose everything that used to be home. And if you don't learn to love yourself honestly, you'll chase validation from people who were never meant to stay. I lost my marriage. I lost the future I thought I'd have. But I'm trying, slowly, painfully, to become a woman my daughter can be proud of. Not perfect, not redeemed, but accountable, present, growing. This isn't the story I wanted, but it's the one I created. And now it's the one I'm choosing to rise from.